December 16, 1944. The frozen forests of the Ardennes. Hauptmann Dieter Vogel pressed his eye against the commander's periscope of his Panzer IV, scanning the fog-shrouded tree line ahead. His division, the 2nd Panzer, had been moving west for 36 hours, and so far American resistance had crumbled before them. Through the grey mist, he could see scattered American equipment abandoned in the retreat. Among the debris, he noticed several discarded tube-shaped weapons lying in the snow. Vogel had seen these before. The Americans called them Bazookas, crude rocket launchers that German intelligence had first documented in Tunisia back in 1943. His crew had been briefed about them during training replacements at Grafenwöhr. The weapons could penetrate armour, yes, but they were short-ranged, inaccurate, and notoriously unreliable in cold weather. The batteries that powered their electrical firing systems died in freezing temperatures. The rockets themselves performed poorly in winter conditions. Most importantly, German doctrine taught that American infantry, when pressed hard and fast, would abandon heavy weapons and flee. The discarded bazookas in the snow seemed to confirm everything Vogel had been taught. What Vogel didn't know, what none of the advancing Panzer commanders knew, was that those abandoned weapons represented an older generation of technology. The American Ordnance Department had been working frantically throughout 1944 to address every weakness the original M1 and M9A1 bazookas had demonstrated in combat. The result was the M9A1, a weapon that would arrive in Belgium just as German armour committed to its deepest penetration of the Ardennes offensive. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. German Panzer crews in December 1944 carried 3 years of Krenning, mixed experience with American rocket launchers. The weapon had first appeared during Operation Torch in November 1942, surprising German forces in North Africa with its ability to penetrate 50 millimeters of armour. But subsequent encounters had revealed significant limitations. The original M1 bazooka weighed 13 pounds and fired a 60mm shaped charge warhead. Its effective range against moving armour rarely exceeded 100 meters. The weapon's electrical firing system relied on batteries that degraded rapidly in moisture or extreme temperatures. Combat reports from Italy and France documented consistent failures. At Salerno, in September 1943, multiple bazookas had failed to fire due to battery problems. In Normandy's hedgerows, moisture caused misfires that left infantry teams exposed and vulnerable. The rocket motor's electrical contact system, which required precise alignment between the rocket's fins and the launcher's contact ring, frequently failed in field conditions. German after-action reports from 1944 noted these failures with satisfaction. American tube weapons proved less effective than feared, particularly in adverse weather. Reliability issues reduce tactical threat. This assessment would prove catastrophically premature. The American Ordnance Department had spent 1944 addressing every documented bazooka failure. The M9 and its improved variant, the M9A1, incorporated radical changes. Most significantly, the electrical firing system was completely eliminated. The new bazookas used a magneto-generator trigger, essentially a mechanical spark generator that functioned reliably in any weather. A simple squeeze of the trigger produced the electrical current needed for ignition, with no batteries required. The launcher itself was redesigned. Where the original M1 had been a one-piece tube that made transport awkward, the M9 broke down into 2 sections that could be quickly assembled in combat. The breakdown feature made the weapon far more portable for airborne operations and easier to conceal in defensive positions. The rocket was improved as well. The M6A3 shaped charge warhead featured a blunted nose that prevented deflection off angled armour surfaces, a problem that had plagued earlier rounds. The warhead could now penetrate up to 102 millimeters of armour plate, sufficient to defeat even Tiger side armour at combat ranges. Production of the M9A1 had accelerated throughout the fall of 1944. By December, factories were producing thousands per week. Priority shipping sent the new bazookas directly to frontline units, often with minimal fanfare. Soldiers would turn in their older M1A1 launchers and receive the improved M9A1s, sometimes with only brief instruction on the mechanical differences. The weapon looked similar enough that many troops didn't immediately grasp how significantly reliability had improved. The priced 101st Airborne Division, rushed to defend Bastogne in late December, received a substantial allocation of M9A1 bazookas just before German forces encircled the town. The airborne units had always been priority recipients of the latest equipment, and ordnance officers had ensured they received enough launchers to equip multiple teams in each rifle company. These weapons would arrive just in time to face the most concentrated German armoured assault of the Ardennes offensive. German intelligence had not detected the M9A1's deployment. Their technical intelligence teams, stretched thin across multiple fronts and hampered by Allied air superiority, had no captured examples to examine. Prisoner interrogations from November and early December in the Aachen sector mentioned improved bazookas, but these reports never reached Panzer units preparing for the Ardennes offensive. German commanders planning Operation Wacht am Rhein, the official name for the Battle of the Bulge, assumed they would face the same temperamental bazookas that had proven so unreliable in Normandy. This intelligence failure would have profound consequences. German operational planning for the Ardennes relied on speed and momentum. Panzer divisions were to break through American lines, bypass strong points, and drive west toward the Meuse River before Allied forces could respond. The plan assumed that American infantry, when isolated and surrounded, would either surrender or retreat. Experience from the Eastern Front and earlier Western campaigns suggested that infantry without tank support rarely stood and fought against armour. Bastogne occupied a critical position in this plan. The town sat at a crossroads where 7 major roads converged. Any force attempting to bypass Bastogne would find its supply lines threatened. Any force attempting to take Bastogne would have to divert strength from the main westward drive. German planners had assumed the Americans would either evacuate Bastogne or that it could be quickly seized by infantry, leaving Panzer units free to continue their advance. The arrival of the 101st Airborne Division changed this calculation entirely, though German commanders didn't immediately recognize the implications. Oberst Heinz Kokott, commanding the 26th Volksgrenadier Division assigned to capture Bastogne, initially believed he faced only scattered American stragglers. His division had already successfully pushed American forces back from multiple positions. One more town, held by demoralized defenders, seemed like a minor obstacle. What Kokott didn't know was that the 101st Airborne brought not just elite training and high morale, but also a concentration of anti-tank weaponry, unprecedented in American defensive operations. Each of the division's 3 parachute infantry regiments deployed 9 bazooka teams at full strength. Additional teams equipped glider infantry and division support units. The total number of bazookas available exceeded 80 launchers, nearly all of them the new M9A1 variant. This concentration of firepower would prove decisive, but not immediately. The first days of the siege saw German forces probing American defenses, testing for weak points, bringing up artillery and preparing for a major assault. The weather remained overcast, grounding Allied aircraft and preventing resupply. American forces inside Bastogne rationed ammunition and prepared defensive positions. Bazooka teams dug fighting positions at key road junctions and likely approach routes, pre-positioning spare rockets and clearing fields of fire. Lieutenant Colonel Harry Kinnard, the 101st's operations officer, understood the tactical mathematics perfectly. Bastogne's defense required channeling German armor onto predictable approaches where prepared teams could engage at optimal ranges. The town's surrounding terrain, with its gentle hills, scattered woods, and network of roads, offered numerous positions where a 2-man team with a bazooka could wait in concealment until targets closed to killing range. The M9A1's reliability meant teams could wait in sub-zero temperatures, confident their weapons would fire when needed. Previous winter operations with the M1A1 had required teams to keep spare batteries warm against their bodies, but the magneto system eliminated this concern entirely. Teams could establish positions hours before an attack and remain there, weapons ready, regardless of how cold it became. December 22nd brought clearer weather and intensified German attacks. Kokot, now reinforced with elements of the 2nd Panzer Division and Panzer Lehr Division, prepared to assault Bastogne from multiple directions. His operational plan assumed that coordinated attacks by infantry supported by armor would overwhelm American defenses. Intelligence briefings assured him the Americans were low on ammunition and demoralized by encirclement. The attack would succeed, Bastogne would fall, and the offensive could continue. The first major armoured assault came from the northwest, along the road from Noville. Hauptmann Ernst von Schroeder led a company of Panzer IVs from the 2nd Panzer Division down the tree-lined road toward American positions. His tanks advanced in column, a formation dictated by the narrow road and thick woods on either side. Von Schroeder had been assured that preliminary artillery had suppressed American defensive positions. His mission was to break through to the town centre and create chaos behind American lines. Sergeant Robert Bowen and Private First Class Eugene Harmon occupied a hastily dug position 30 metres off the road, concealed in a small depression behind a fallen tree. Both men were veterans of Market Garden, experienced with the bazooka and calm under fire. They had positioned themselves specifically to engage the flanks of any armour using this approach route. Their M9A1 lay across, Bowen's lap, loaded with an M6A3 rocket. 3 additional rockets lay within arm's reach, carefully positioned for quick reloading. As the 1st Panzer IV rounded a bend in the road, Bowen waited. German doctrine taught tank commanders to button up when under fire, relying on periscopes for visibility. The woods and previous artillery made buttoning up a logical precaution. This meant von Schroeder and his crew had limited peripheral vision, their attention focused forward on the road ahead and the known American positions to their front. Bowen waited until the Panzer's side armour filled his crude iron sights, range approximately 75 metres. The tank's engine noise covered any sound of movement. He squeezed the trigger. The magneto generator sparked reliably despite the freezing temperature. The rocket motor ignited with its characteristic whoosh. 2.36 seconds later, the shaped charge warhead struck the Panzer's left hull side, just below the turret ring. The Monroe effect, discovered decades earlier but only recently weaponized effectively, focused explosive energy into a superheated jet that burned through 50 millimeters of side armor as if it were paper. The jet penetrated the crew compartment, igniting stored ammunition. The Panzer IV exploded with such violence that its turret lifted several meters before crashing back onto the burning hull. Von Schroeder and his crew died instantly. The 2nd Panzer in column, seeing the lead tank explode, attempted to reverse. The narrow road and trees made maneuvering impossible. Another team, positioned on the opposite side of the road, fired. Their rocket struck the Panzer's rear armour, where thin plates protecting the engine compartment offered minimal resistance. The explosion disabled the tank and set its engine compartment ablaze. The crew bailed out, stumbling into the snow as American rifle fire swept the road. The remaining Panzers in the column faced an impossible tactical situation. They couldn't advance past the burning wrecks blocking the road. They couldn't maneuver off-road through dense woods. Reversing meant presenting vulnerable rear armour to concealed bazooka teams whose positions they still hadn't located. The column commander ordered withdrawal. 3 tanks destroyed, 2 damaged, in less than 5 minutes of contact. Similar scenes repeated across multiple approach routes to Bastogne throughout December 22nd and 23rd. German armour, channeled onto predictable roads by terrain and weather, advanced into killing zones where prepared American teams waited with the new, reliable bazookas. The M9A1's consistent performance meant that teams that would have experienced misfires with older weapons now destroyed their targets reliably. Oberst Kokot, receiving casualty reports from multiple sectors, grew increasingly frustrated. His after-action notes, captured after the war, revealed incomprehension. American infantry defensive, positions displaying unexpected effectiveness against armor. Anti-tank weapons functioning despite sub-zero temperatures. Multiple tanks lost to shoulder-fired rockets at each engagement. American morale remains high despite encirclement. Situation requires reassessment, but reassessment required time German commanders didn't have. The offensive's timetable demanded Bastogne's fall to secure supply routes for the westward drive. Pressure from higher headquarters intensified. General Feldmarschall Walter Model, commanding Army Group B, needed Bastogne taken immediately. Delays were unacceptable. More armor would be committed until American defenses collapsed. December 24th brought the largest German armored assault yet. Elements from 3 Panzer divisions, nearly 80 tanks, prepared to attack Bastogne simultaneously from multiple directions. The attack would be coordinated with heavy artillery preparation and supported by infantry. German commanders believed overwhelming force would succeed where previous attacks had failed. They still assumed they faced demoralized American troops with malfunctioning equipment. They were wrong on both counts. American troops, while tired and low on supplies, maintained strong morale. More critically, their bazookas worked perfectly. The M9A1's magneto-firing system functioned flawlessly in temperatures well below freezing. Teams that had been in position since before dawn, lying in snow-covered foxholes for hours, found their weapons ready when German armor appeared. The Christmas Eve attacks produced the heaviest German tank losses of the entire Bastogne siege. American bazooka teams, now fully experienced with their weapons capabilities and confident in their reliability, engaged German armor with devastating effectiveness. The concentration of teams covering each approach meant that any German tank advancing faced multiple potential threats from different angles. Hauptmann Friedrich Werner, commanding a company of Panther tanks from Panzer Lehr Division, led his unit toward Bastogne from the southwest. His Panthers represented Germany's most sophisticated tank design, with sloped armor, powerful 75mm guns, and superior optics. Werner believed his Panthers could overwhelm American defenses through firepower and protection. His crew had been briefed about bazookas, but doctrine taught that Panther frontal armor, at 80mm and well-sloped, was effectively immune to the 60mm-shaped charges American rockets carried. This confidence evaporated when Werner's lead Panther exploded from a flank shot fired at minimal range. The American team had waited until the entire column passed their concealed position before firing at the rearmost Panther, trapping the column between destroyed vehicles. Werner's own tank took a hit moments later, the rocket penetrating his Panther's side armor and detonating ammunition. Werner survived only because he was standing in the commander's hatch, scanning for threats. The blast threw him clear of the vehicle. His crew perished in the fire. Crawling through snow toward German lines, Werner encountered another survivor from his company. Together they counted the burning Panthers behind them. 7 tanks destroyed in less than 10 minutes. American infantry never revealed themselves. They simply fired from concealment, destroyed their targets, and waited for the next opportunity. Werner's report to his division commander, delivered from a hospital bed, reflected shock. The American tube weapon performed far better than intelligence assessments indicated. Reliability appeared perfect. Crews demonstrated skill and discipline. Panthers proved vulnerable to flank shots despite armor quality. Recommend complete tactical revision for operations against American defensive positions. But tactical revision required information German commanders lacked. They still didn't know about the M9A1. They still assumed they faced the same unreliable bazookas documented throughout 1944. Each failure was attributed to American luck, good positioning, or German tactical errors, rather than to fundamental changes in weapon capability. The weather on December 25th brought a Christmas gift to Bastogne's defenders that would prove more valuable than ammunition or food. Clear skies meant Allied aircraft could finally fly. C-47 transport planes dropped supplies by parachute, including ammunition, medical supplies, and, critically, more M6A, 3 rockets for the bazooka teams. The resupply meant teams that had been rationing their rockets could now engage targets more liberally. German commanders, watching the supply drops, understood the strategic implications. Bastogne would not fall through starvation or ammunition shortage. It would have to be taken by force, and time was running out. The offensive's momentum had already stalled. American reinforcements, particularly Patton's Third Army, driving north, threatened to relieve Bastogne within days. If the town didn't fall immediately, the entire Ardennes offensive would collapse. General Lieutenant Heinrich Freiherr von Luttwitz, commanding the 47th Panzer Corps responsible for Bastogne, assembled his remaining armour for one final massive assault. The attack would concentrate overwhelming force on a single sector, smashing through American defences regardless of cost. Von Luttwitz scraped together every operational tank from the 2nd Panzer Division, Panzer Lehr Division, and 9th Panzer Division. The force totaled approximately 60 tanks, a mixture of Panzer IVs, Panthers, and several Tiger tanks held in reserve. The attack plan called for a dawn assault on December 26th, targeting the American positions northeast of Bastogne, near the village of Champs. Intelligence suggested this sector was weakly held. A breakthrough here would allow German armour to penetrate Bastogne's inner defences and create chaos. The attack would be preceded by the heaviest artillery barrage yet, followed by infantry assault to clear American positions, with armour exploiting any breakthrough. Colonel William Roberts, commanding Combat Command B of the 10th Armoured Division attached to the 101st Airborne, studied his maps on Christmas night. He had limited armour, mostly M4 Sherman tanks and M18 tank destroyers, positioned to cover the most likely German approach routes. But his most reliable anti-tank defence remained the bazooka teams scattered throughout the defensive perimeter. Roberts had been impressed by the M9A1s' performance during the siege. Unlike earlier bazookas that had frequently malfunctioned, these new weapons fired every time. Roberts issued orders for the northeast sector to be reinforced with additional bazooka teams. Every available launcher was positioned to cover the road network around Champs. Teams dug in during the night, some in buildings, others in foxholes, still others in improvised positions behind hedgerows and stone walls. The concentration of launchers in this sector reached unprecedented density. Nearly 20 bazooka teams covered less than 2 square kilometres of terrain. Staff Sergeant James Hendricks commanded one of these teams. A veteran of Normandy and Market Garden, Hendricks had used bazookas extensively in combat. He had experienced the frustration of the M9A1's battery failures in Normandy, where crucial shots failed to fire because of dead batteries. The M9A1 had restored his confidence in the weapon. In 2 weeks at Bastogne, his team had destroyed 3 German tanks without a single misfire. Hendricks positioned his team in the upper floor of a stone farmhouse overlooking the main road from Champs. His field of fire covered approximately 200 metres of road in both directions. He had 4 rockets immediately available, with another 6 stored downstairs. His assistant gunner, Private Eldon Moore, was a replacement, who'd joined the division just before the Bulge. Moore had minimal combat experience, but Hendricks had trained him thoroughly on the M9A1's operation. The weapon's simplicity meant even inexperienced soldiers could employ it effectively after basic instruction. The German artillery barrage began at 05:30 on December 26th. Shells crashed into American positions with methodical precision, working over known defensive locations. The barrage lasted 40 minutes, longer and heavier than any previous bombardment of the siege. German crews fired nearly 4,000 rounds, attempting to suppress American defenders before the armour advanced. Hendricks and Moore huddled in the farmhouse cellar during the bombardment, waiting for it to lift. When the shelling finally stopped, they scrambled upstairs to their firing position. Through the pre-dawn darkness, Hendricks could hear the distinctive rumble of tank engines starting, the squeal of tracks, the mechanical symphony of POF, armoured vehicles moving into assault formation. The first tanks appeared as darker shapes against the grey dawn. Panthers, moving in line abreast across open fields toward Champs. Hendricks counted at least 12, possibly more behind them. This was far larger than any previous German attack. He waited, letting them close. The M9A1's effective range exceeded 300 metres, but Hendricks preferred shots under 100 metres for guaranteed hits. At 75 metres, he fired. The rocket struck the lead Panther's bowplate at an angle and deflected. The blunted nose of the M6A3 warhead, designed specifically to prevent such deflections, failed in this instance due to the extreme angle of impact. The Panther continued advancing, apparently undamaged. Hendricks cursed, reloading quickly. Moore handed him another rocket, already checking the contact points. Hendricks's second shot targeted the same Panther, but aimed for the turret side as the tank pivoted to bring its gun to bear on their position. This rocket struck squarely, penetrating the turret side armour. The shaped charge jet killed the gunner and loader instantly. The commander bailed out, tumbling from his hatch as smoke poured from the turret. The remaining Panthers scattered, seeking cover and attempting to locate the source of the fire. This was precisely what American defensive planning had anticipated. Scattered tanks meant isolated targets. Other bazooka teams, positioned in a semicircle around the German approach route, began engaging from multiple directions. Sergeant Thomas Kelly's team, positioned in a tree line 300 metres from Hendricks's location, destroyed a Panther that was attempting to reverse toward cover. The rocket struck the thinner rear deck armour, penetrating into the engine compartment and setting the power plant ablaze. Corporal Vincent Rizzo's team, dug into a foxhole at the edge of Champs, destroyed another Panther that attempted to use a building for cover. The rocket passed through a window and detonated against the tank's side armour at point-blank range. Within 15 minutes, 7 Panthers lay destroyed or burning. The German attack, which had begun with such promise, stalled completely. Tank commanders, unable to locate all the American positions and facing fire from multiple directions, withdrew to reassess. The infantry that was supposed to follow the armour never advanced, pinned down by American small arms fire. Von Lüttwitz, monitoring radio traffic from his command post, struggled to understand what was happening. His most powerful tanks, supposedly superior to anything the Americans possessed, were being destroyed by infantry weapons. The reports from tank commanders who survived made no sense. American rockets functioned perfectly despite cold temperatures. American teams demonstrated remarkable fire discipline, waiting for optimal shots. American positions were numerous and well concealed. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The German attack resumed at 0800 after a hasty reorganization. This time, von Lüttwitz committed his Tiger tanks, believing their heavier armor would resist American rockets. 3 Tigers, massive 60-ton vehicles with 88mm guns and armor up to 100mm thick, advanced toward Champs supported by infantry and remaining Panthers. Lieutenant Colonel Kinnard, watching from his observation post, recognized the Tigers immediately. These were formidable opponents. American Sherman tanks struggled against Tigers in direct engagement. Even the M9A1 bazooka faced challenges. The Tiger's frontal armor exceeded the M6A3 warhead's penetration capability. Side shots were necessary, which meant letting the Tigers advance deep into American positions before engaging. Kinnard radioed instructions to all bazooka teams. Hold fire on Tigers until flank shots are available. Repeat, hold fire until flanks are exposed. Priority targets remain medium tanks and supporting infantry. The discipline this order required was immense. Watching a Tiger advance, knowing you couldn't effectively engage it, frontally demanded nerve. The Tigers rumbled forward with ponderous inevitability, their long 88mm guns traversing slowly as commanders scanned for threats. The lead Tiger passed Hendrix's position, its massive bulk shaking the farmhouse foundations. Hendrix held his fire as ordered, waiting. The Tiger continued another 50 meters before stopping, its commander apparently uncertain about proceeding deeper into American positions without infantry support. This hesitation proved fatal. The Tiger sat broadside to Hendrix's position at optimal range. He aimed carefully at the turret side, just below the commander's cupola where armor was thinnest. The M9A1 rocket streaked across the gap and struck precisely where aimed. The explosion was smaller than when striking lighter tanks, but the penetration occurred. The shaped charge jet burned through the turret side armor and detonated ammunition stored in ready racks. The Tiger's internal explosion was devastating. The turret hatches blew open, flames roaring skyward. The massive vehicle simply sat there, burning like a funeral pyre. No crew members escaped. The Tiger's thick armor, designed to protect against enemy tanks, trapped the crew in an inferno. The two remaining Tigers attempted to withdraw, presenting their vulnerable rear armor. Staff Sergeant Raymond Summers' team, positioned specifically to cover withdrawal routes, destroyed one Tiger with a rear shot that penetrated the engine deck. The third Tiger escaped, its commander skillfully using terrain and smoke for concealment. By mid-morning, December 26th, the German attack had collapsed completely. American Bazooka teams had destroyed or disabled over 20 tanks, including 2 precious Tigers and multiple Panthers. German infantry, without armor support and taking casualties from American rifle and machine gun fire, withdrew to their starting positions. Von Lüttwitz's final attempt to take Bastogne by force had failed decisively. The statistics emerging from that morning's battle told a remarkable story. American defenders had faced approximately 60 German tanks in coordinated attacks. Bazooka teams alone accounted for at least 23 confirmed kills, with several more probable kills where destroyed tanks couldn't be immediately verified. Artillery and tank destroyer fire accounted for additional German losses, but the bazookas had clearly been the primary tank killers. The M9A1's reliability had been perfect. Not a single documented misfire occurred among the dozens of rockets fired. Compare this to Normandy 6 months earlier, where the M9A1 had experienced failure rates approaching 20% in wet conditions. The improved weapon had performed, exactly as designed, functioning flawlessly in sub-zero temperatures, and delivering devastating effectiveness against German armor. German prisoners captured after the failed attacks provided interrogators with valuable insights into enemy thinking. A Panzer commander from the 2nd Panzer Division, Lieutenant Klaus Hoffmann, expressed shock at American bazooka performance. "We were assured the American tube weapons were unreliable in cold weather. Intelligence briefings stated they would malfunction frequently. Instead, they fired every time. Their crews showed excellent discipline and training. Our tanks had no answer to threats emerging from every direction." Another prisoner, Obergefreiter Hans Weber, a Panther loader who survived his tank's destruction, was more direct. "Your bazookas worked better than our own Panzerschreck. We thought we faced inferior weapons operated by inexperienced soldiers. We were wrong about both. The weapon is deadly, and your soldiers knew exactly how to use it." These testimonies revealed the fundamental German intelligence failure. Throughout late 1944, German technical intelligence had focused primarily on Eastern Front threats, particularly Soviet tank developments and artillery improvements. Western Front intelligence received lower priority and fewer resources. The result was that fundamental changes in American infantry anti-tank capability went undetected until German armor encountered them in combat. The Battle of Bastogne's final days saw continued German attacks, but with noticeably less armor commitment. Von Lüttwitz had lost over 40% of his tank strength in failed attempts to take the town. The remaining panzers were pulled back, reserved for defensive operations against the inevitable American counterattack. On December 27th, elements of Patton's Third Army reached Bastogne, breaking the siege. The German offensive had failed. Post-war analysis by American ordnance officers attempted to quantify the bazooka's impact at Bastogne. The numbers were striking. During the siege, American forces destroyed or disabled approximately 80 German armoured vehicles. Of these, bazooka teams accounted for at least 40 confirmed kills, with possibly 10 more that couldn't be definitively verified. This meant that shoulder-fired infantry weapons had destroyed more German armour than American tanks, tank destroyers, artillery, and air power combined. The economic implications were staggering. Each M9A1 bazooka cost approximately $34 to manufacture. Each M6A3 rocket cost roughly $18. The most expensive bazooka kill at Bastogne, a Tiger tank requiring 3 rockets to destroy, cost $54 in ammunition expenditure. The Tiger itself represented approximately 300,000 Reichsmarks to produce, equivalent to roughly $120,000 at 1944 exchange rates. The return on investment was almost incomprehensible. Colonel S.L.A. Marshall, the Army's chief combat historian, interviewed dozens of bazooka crews after Bastogne. His report, filed in January 1945, highlighted the psychological dimensions of the weapon's effectiveness. The M9A1's reliability had transformed infantry confidence in engaging armour. Where soldiers with the older M9A1 had approached armour engagements with justified trepidation, knowing their weapons might fail at critical moments, M9A1 users demonstrated aggressive confidence. One sergeant told Marshall, "With the old bazooka, you got one shot, maybe. If the battery died or the rocket misfired, you were done. With this new one, you know it'll fire. That changes everything. You're not hoping your weapon works. You know it works. That makes you dangerous." This psychological shift, multiplied across hundreds of infantry teams throughout American forces in Europe, represented a fundamental change in the infantry armour dynamic. German tactical doctrine, developed over years of warfare, had always assumed infantry required specialized heavy weapons to effectively engage armour. Towed anti-tank guns required trucks or horses for mobility, making them vulnerable to artillery and air attack. Anti-tank rifles were heavy, required 2-man crews, and barely penetrated modern armour. Infantry's primary defence against tanks was supposed to be avoidance and reliance on their own armour support. The M9A1 bazooka invalidated these assumptions. Any 2-man team could carry tank-killing capability equivalent to a towed anti-tank gun. They could establish positions quickly, engage from concealment, and withdraw before German forces could respond. They required no vehicles, no horses, no elaborate logistics. A single jeep could transport enough bazookas and rockets to equip an entire company's worth of teams. The German response to Bastogne's lessons came too late to affect the war's outcome. In January 1945, technical intelligence finally obtained captured M9A1 launchers for evaluation. Testing at German facilities confirmed American claims. The weapon was indeed far more reliable than earlier versions, and its magneto-firing system worked flawlessly regardless of temperature. German engineers prepared recommendations for similar improvements to their own Panzer rocket launchers, but by early 1945, German industry could barely maintain production of existing weapons, much less develop improved versions. General Major Friedrich von Mellenthin, Chief of Staff for Army Group G, wrote in his post-war memoirs about the battle's significance. Bastogne demonstrated that American infantry, properly equipped and trained, could stop German armour through sheer defensive effectiveness. The bazooka, in its improved form, had become a battle-winning weapon. Our tank crews, who had grown accustomed to American equipment being adequate but not exceptional, suddenly faced weapons that matched or exceeded our own capabilities in the one area where we believed we maintained superiority. The irony von Mellenthin identified was profound. German armoured doctrine had always emphasized quality over quantity, sophisticated engineering over mass production. Yet, in the bazooka, Americans had created a weapon that was both simple enough for mass production and sophisticated enough in its essential technology, the shaped charge warhead, to defeat the best German armor. The Americans had achieved what German engineering culture considered impossible, a weapon that was simultaneously crude in construction and devastating in effect. The lessons of Bastogne rippled through American and German forces with remarkable speed. By January 1945, every American infantry division in Europe had received priority allocations of M9A1 bazookas. Training emphasized the aggressive tactics that had proven so effective in the Ardennes. German forces, meanwhile, adjusted their doctrine to account for the reality that any American defensive position might conceal multiple bazooka teams capable of destroying even the heaviest tanks. The statistical record of the final months of the war validated what Bastogne had demonstrated. From January through May 1945, American infantry anti-tank weapons accounted for an ever-increasing proportion of German armor losses. Where bazookas had destroyed perhaps 15 to 20% of German tanks in Normandy, that figure climbed to 30% or more in the final campaigns. The weapon had evolved from a useful supplement to tank destroyers and artillery into a primary tank-killing system in its own right. German tank crews, interviewed after the war, consistently cited the bazooka as one of the most psychologically devastating weapons they faced. A Panzer commander who fought from the Bulge through Germany's final collapse stated simply, "We feared your bazookas more than your tanks. Your Shermans, we could see and fight. Your bazooka teams were invisible until they fired, and by then it was too late." The transformation that occurred at Bastogne represented more than tactical evolution. It symbolized a fundamental shift in armored warfare itself. The tank, which had dominated battlefields since 1940, had found its perfect counter not in better tanks or more powerful anti-tank guns, but in a simple tube launcher that any infantryman could carry and employ. The democratization of tank-killing capability that the bazooka represented would influence military doctrine for decades to come. For the Panzer commanders who had laughed at bazookas in the war's early years, dismissing them as crude American desperation, Bastogne served as a brutal education. Those 40 destroyed tanks in the forests around a small Belgian town had written the final chapter of German armoured supremacy. The men of the 101st Airborne and 10th Armoured Division, crouching in frozen foxholes with their M9A1 launchers, had demonstrated that the age of tank invincibility had ended not with a technological revolution, but with a simple, reliable tool placed in the hands of determined soldiers. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.